Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community.
Good morning and welcome to Money Sense. I'm your host, Neville Hicks. Unfortunately, I don't have a co-host today, but we've got a great guest lined up. And before I give an introduction to him, I want to just touch a little bit about the Cayman Investment Forum last week. We had a great turnout, our best yet. Over 200 people attend the Cayman Investment Forum. It was a huge success, so I wanted to thank everyone who attended, our sponsors, and particularly our volunteers for a great event. With that, I'd like to introduce our esteemed guest this morning, Mark Yaxley from Strategic Wealth Preservation. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, Neville. It's good to be here with you.
We're going to spend the morning or the next half an hour really talking about precious metals, how they work, what they are, the significance, how they fit into your investment portfolio, how much should you hold, and kind of the different ways of investing in them. So if you're interested at all in precious metals, Mark is certainly a specialist here and has been in the industry for a number of years. He is based here, Strategic Wealth Preservation. If you haven't heard of them, they're a fantastic kind of new company that's been growing rapidly. Mark's been really, fundamental in driving the growth there. So we're very lucky to have him on the show.
Thanks so much, Neville. It's just to second what you said earlier, we participated in that Cayman Investment Conference last week, and it was a very great success for you. You had some great speakers on there, and Strategic Wealth Preservation got to meet some of our clients again, got to meet some new prospective clients as well, so thanks for having us there, and we're glad to be with you this morning and inform your listeners about precious metals. It's an often misunderstood topic, or I could say there might be a lack of education generally about gold and silver.
Certainly.
So it's something that we try to get out there. It's just a simple message about how easy it is to own precious metals and why people should consider it.
So I think with precious metals, I think the first one that jumps out probably to most listeners, I know certainly for myself, is gold. But what are other types of precious metals, and kind of what's the significance of them historically?
Right. So most people would be familiar with gold and silver, obviously, probably from jewelry, or some people who are a little bit older than you and I might remember the days when gold and silver were actually used as money, up until really about 100 years ago. Literally, when you got paid, you were getting paid in gold and silver coins, and more recently, they play a different role in our society. So today, gold and silver are really used as investment tools mostly, and they have industrial applications. But the other metals that are available to investors are platinum, palladium, and rhodium, lesser known. They've got industrial applications. For examples,
We got the background music.
Yeah, we got that done. Thanks. Sorry about that. Platinum and palladium are used mostly in catalytic converters.
Okay.
So every vehicle that has emissions, whether it be a scooter, whether it be a sedan, whether it be an SUV, has a different amount of platinum and palladium in the catalytic converter. So that creates obviously industrial demand for those metals. Rhodium has similar industrial applications. And going back to what you asked earlier about historical significance, aside from gold and silver being used as money previously, these metals have been used for medical reasons in laboratories.
What do you mean by that exactly?
So if you take silver, for example, like a popular brand like Lululemon, one of the things that Lululemon says is that our clothing doesn't smell after you work out, and the reason that the clothing doesn't smell is because there's a little bit of silver that they work into the liner, and it has antibacterial properties. Another example would be solar panels, contain silver, very reflective. So the metals have different properties, and therefore pretty serious industrial applications, and that keeps the price where it is. Basically, it creates a demand for it, steady demand.
Certainly, and it's I guess kind of gold. Getting back to gold, I think a lot of people can relate to that. But it's always kind of one of those ones is how what is gold price today? I think it's $1,270 thereabouts per ounce. How do we arrive at that price? I mean, who determines that? It's not necessarily a supply and demand thing like oil like another commodity where there's a use, and I guess there's still functions that keep that price at a certain level. But who determines that price of gold per se?
Well, like any commodity, the market determines the price at the end of the day. There is a supply and demand function or component to it. Obviously, there's very detailed reports about how much is pulled out of the ground, how much is used in industry, how much is used in jewelry, for example, in the Asian market. And then you have the more speculative side where people are actually investing and trading precious metals, and more of the gold that's pulled out of the ground is owned either by central banks or by private investors. So that definitely plays into the pricing as well. But there's an inherent store of values, especially when you talk about gold. I mean, people have been chasing this stuff for 6,000 years.
Certainly.
Nations have gone to war over gold. When there is major conflict, the first thing to leave a country is the gold. And during the Second World War, a lot of the gold that was housed in France and Germany and other countries that were participating in the war in Europe actually moved to North America, ended up in Montreal, in the Sun Life building. If you're from Montreal, you'd be familiar with that. And the United States. Obviously, a lot of it ended up in New York and Fort Knox. There's a deep history there, and it's now hardwired. People believe it's hardwired into the human brain because it plays such an important role in our society for such a long time that people actually, when they look at a piece of gold, they know there's inherent value there. So that plays into it as well.
Certainly. And I guess the thing about gold, if you look at it from, I guess we're picking on gold a bit, but if you look at it from, okay, what value does it have? I guess there's, jewelry, which is your, I guess from the Cayman Islands, you can kind of relate to that. But how do people, how does the investor get access, or what are the ways that people can get access to a gold investment or other precious metal investments?
Sure. I mean, there are a number of different options. I'm sure you with your background would know and can talk to this as well. There's different ways, obviously, people can gain exposure. The most basic form would probably be buying physical precious metals. You can buy bars and coins, starting as small as 1 gram all the way up to the large bars that back futures contracts, which would weigh 400 ounces and 1,000 ounces in the case of silver. You've got mining shares. A lot of mining companies out of Canada, for example, the United States, that you can buy shares in.
So they're buying the gold miners themselves.
Buying
on exchange and getting access to them that way.
Yeah, and then you've got a number of paper gold products. Personally, I would consider an ETF a paper gold product. These products claim to be backed by physical. Some are fully backed. Others are backed to a certain percentage, and others probably aren't backed at all, to be quite honest. So you need to definitely do your homework and understand what you're buying when you're purchasing it. But I mean, you've probably got more knowledge in that area than I do dealing with your clients.
I think too. Yeah, I think there's multiple ways that people can access it, and I think that's certainly something that people should consider. I guess the question is what is best? What do people have access to, and what do people feel more comfortable with? And I think what determines that a lot of the times is the liquidity of it, the cost of it, and ultimately do you need to touch or feel it, or are you comfortable holding, I guess, what would be considered a paper form of gold?
I think it really depends what your goals are as an investor. If you're looking to speculate with precious metals, which a lot of people do because they can be quite volatile and there's opportunity to trade it and make some money and some returns there, in that case you might want to look at something like an ETF, which is very liquid, and you can get it in and out of the position very quickly. If it's more of a long-term core part of your portfolio that you're maybe looking to pass down to your kids or hold on to for 10 or 20 years, physical gold starts to make a little bit more sense, because you're the owner of the property.
Certainly.
And you have no counterparty risk. So there's, it really depends what your goals are. And then again, you kind of get into the minutiae of each one. And that's why you want to speak to someone like yourself or myself, maybe that has some knowledge about precious metals.
And then I guess touching more on the physical gold side, so holding it, I guess people can go and buy. What are the different type? You touch a little bit out on kind of coins, bars. what are the options out there? I know we're specifically talking about gold, but what are where does this? Who makes these gold coins?
Yeah,
and
so most large countries have a national mint. For example, the Royal Canadian Mint in Ottawa, the U.S. Mint. There's several locations in the U.S. You've got mints throughout the world. China obviously has a national mint, and several countries in Europe. So they produce a whole series of bullion products.
Okay. And
when we say bullion, really what that means is either a bar or a coin that's minted by a recognized mint. So you've got, literally 1 ounce rounds are probably the thing that people see the most, 1 ounce coins. You'll see those in commercials and sometimes in the newspaper and things like that. If you went to a local coin shop, that's probably what you'd find.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got these bars that start at 1 ounce all the way up to the larger bars like you see in the movies. In the Italian Job, for example, those are 400-ounce gold bars.
The big ones.
The big bars. They're quite heavy. They weigh 28 pounds. And all of these products are pure gold. So they're 99.99% pure. Basically, you can source these either from a local coin shop, or you can deal with a company like Strategic Wealth Preservation, where you can purchase them as an investment product. You've also got the option of buying silver, platinum, and palladium. All of these metals are available also in coins and bars. So what we recommend to people often is if you're thinking about precious metals, you might want to own more than one type of precious metal, because they do, even though over the long term they tend to
move together,
correlated. There are days where they are not correlated. For example, if there's a platinum mining strike in South Africa, the price of platinum is going to shoot up, and therefore you'd like to have some in your portfolio.
Certainly. Very interesting stuff on precious metals. We're going to take a quick break, but please stay with us, and after the break we'll come back and continue this conversation with Mark Yaxley from SWP. Thank you.
This is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community. Brought to you by the CFA Society Cayman Islands and sponsored by One TradeX.
And now, more Money Sense.
Good morning and welcome back to Money Sense. I'm your host, Neville Hicks, alongside Christophe Barnett. And our guest in today's studio is Mark Yaxley from Strategic Wealth Preservation, located here in the Cayman Islands. I guess with that, kicking over to Christophe, we've talked a little bit about the different forms of or precious metals, ways to get access to them. For the listeners out there, what portion of their investment portfolio should they consider investing in, let's say, gold or other kind of precious metals?
And one question that we always get: what type of returns should I expect from gold?
Well, that's can be a fairly complicated answer. Really, there's a lot of factors that come into play when you're talking about returns. What I can tell you is that gold is up about 20% this year in 2016. It's up nearly 300% since the year 2000. So there is money to be made if you do want to speculate. Personally, I don't advise people to speculate in gold. I think it should just be a core holding. You should have a fixed percentage of your portfolio in precious metals. But I'd kick it back to you guys as the investment advisors and say, how much would you recommend people put in their portfolio? I get that question a lot.
Well, one thing to consider is that commodities on the whole don't have an implied return. Like if we think about a bond, the return is interest. If we think about stocks or buying company equities, there is a return in dividends usually. But when we think of a commodity like a barrel of oil, what is the return there? And a bar of gold, what's the return there? Well, there's no implied return because it's not going to produce more gold or more oil. So the function is, how is it going to be used? So some people will argue.
Demand.
Absolutely, but then some people will argue the company that uses those commodities is a better investment. But I think the point you touched on in the first segment about being a store of value, right? So it's hard to just store a barrel of oil in your house, but a bar of gold can have a lot of value in terms of weight and size relative to its value. And one thing that we've seen throughout history is gold has survived the various monetary systems that we have. One thing we forget is that in history, it hasn't always been the U.S. dollar that we use for trade, right? It used to be the pound, and then there's the Spanish, pieces of eight that came from the idea that people would trade in those commodities, Dutch guilder, and so on and so on.
Fiat currencies,
But
right?
gold has survived all of those changes. Now, will the U.S. dollar continue forever? Who knows, right? But having some level of gold is sort of an insurance, not for the end of the world. I hate all of this fear-based thing, and we can talk about that, which I think we all try to ignore. But just it acts as some insurance, and it changes. The price often responds different to just stocks and bonds. So I guess in terms of the question of how much to invest, don't sell everything and put everything in gold, but it can have a portion in the portfolio, in the alternative space of your portfolio. So
Certainly.
maybe 5-10% or less or more, depending on the risk tolerance and the individual needs of the investor.
I think, too, adding to that, one of the things you pointed out, Christophe, which I think is important, is a stock, you can invest in a company and it can go to zero.
Correct.
You can buy gold or precious metals, they're not going to go out of business. There's going to be value in that asset, and that's been over thousands and thousands of years. And it's interesting. We talk about gold as a currency. I think more than ever in the last, since Bretton Woods, that we're probably at that point with all the monetary easing and printing of money where people are, nations are looking to kind of hoard gold a bit. And, if we ever get to that point of kind of becoming a gold standard or at least being supported by gold, it's probably never been more prevalent. Would you say you're getting more inquiries there, Mark, on that side? More fear-based, I guess, investing, which, again, we never try to promote that, but I think certainly with the media out there, it's probably top of mind.
I think so. We're hearing, I wouldn't necessarily call it fear. I would say people are starting to be uncomfortable in the current economic climate. Whether they be large investors or small investors. I was at the cafe the other day having a coffee with a friend talking about this, and the waitress overheard us speaking and came over and made a comment about, she felt that we were living in uncertain times and that, look at the U.S. and look at the situation in Europe with the immigration problems and the referendums and Brexit. And I think a lot of people are feeling confused and uncertain about what's happening. And during times like that, gold tends to be an investment where people feel comfortable because it is time tested.
I guess maybe, you could look at that being a function of it being up 20% year to date.
That's a very good indication, I would say. So there continues to be quite a strong demand. I wanted to just throw this in there. Christophe touched on some really good points earlier. A really good example of how gold benefits a portfolio would be the financial crisis that we saw, 2008 through 2011. A lot of people lost value in their portfolios. On average, you could say maybe 30 or 40% of their portfolio value in some cases, maybe more in some cases. Some companies went to zero during that time or near it. Gold and silver were up during that same period of time 160% because they have an absolute negative correlation to equities in the U.S. dollar during times of crisis. So adding a component or having a component of precious metals will get you through those hard times. And really what it is, to Christophe's point, is wealth insurance. It's probably the best positioning I've ever heard for gold. It's not going to create a return for you, pay you dividend, pay you interest, but you're sure happy you have it during a time of crisis when everything else is down. Gold and silver will tend to be up.
Kind of offsets maybe some of your other losses in your portfolio. I think Christophe and I were chatting. There was one time you said it, and I know it was kind of one of those things of, okay, if it's 5% of your portfolio, you're every year you're kind of buying a little bit, kind of keeping that 5% up, and it's one of those investments that you hope actually never goes up in a weird sort of way, but it is kind of that insurance option that if there is trouble in equities or bonds, or even, I guess the second function of that is even real estate property, typically gold has a tendency to kind of offset that. Would you say that? That's right?
Well, absolutely. Gold has advantages over real estate. You can take it with you, right? That's something that we're very lucky in the Western world that we've never had to, put our valuables in a pillowcase, but this isn't a historical artifact because this happened to the Syrian people, right? If
Certainly.
they just have to leave with the clothes on their back, and I guess what gets lost in this is sort of the human trafficking element. When those people pay for passage across the Mediterranean, maybe it's family gold, right? And so we hope to never get there. But absolutely, I totally agree that I hope that we never have that. I would prefer if the U.S. dollar continues. It's convenient, right? It's convenient to use our card and swipe. But if there's some sort of transition, like you both have said, gold has historically been insurance to that.
Certainly. I think that's a good chat. And I think with that, I wanted to kick it over to you, Mark, and just, with strategic wealth preservation, which is, we've had a tour of the facilities. They're world-class facilities based here in the Cayman Islands. I guess walk us through how a customer kind of interacts or buys physical gold through you guys, or just how that works. Do they have access to it? What are their options to buy?
Sure. I mean, it's actually very simple. Most people probably have the misconception that buying physical metal is difficult or confusing. Basically, like most other investments that you'll make, first step, open an account. You can come see us in person if you're here in the Cayman Islands, or we can do this over the internet. But you can open an account. We ask you for your contact information and a copy of your ID. And once your account is open, you basically have full access to gold, silver, platinum, and palladium in physical form, which you can buy in the form of bars or coins. Different price points, starting as low as $20 for silver coins, up to $500,000 in gold bars if you're looking to do that. And you lock in the transaction with us. You can do that again in person or over the phone or over the internet. You pay for your order, and then you have the option to either pick it up or keep it in storage with us, whatever you feel most comfortable with. If it's a small amount, you might want to take that home or put it in a safe deposit box. But once it starts to become more significant, you probably want to consider private storage with us because it's fully insured. So you can go to bed at night and not have to worry about how your gold is doing. It'll be there on the shelf for you tomorrow.
And then if you want to come visit your gold,
Spend some time with
some time, say hello.
It happens more often than you think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, can I bring gold that I have? Can I take the gold out if I want to? How does that work?
Right. So you can deposit metal that you already own. You don't have to buy it from Strategic Wealth Preservation. Primarily, we're a storage facility above and beyond anything else. So you can deposit existing metals and you can withdraw at any time. It's your personal property. We have no title to this property. You can come in and say, Mark, I need to withdraw my metal. And so long as you schedule the appointment, we're fine with that. And you can sell it at any time too. That's really important. Gold and silver are actually quite liquid. People might not know that, but you can sell your bars and coins on demand and you'll be paid within 48 hours, just like any other investment. So,
and who do you guys find a buyer, or do you guys buy it? Or, I mean,
we're the buyer.
I think that's pretty unique, because I think some people, I think certainly my conception was, okay, well, let's say I buy, let's say I buy 10 ounces of gold. Am I stuck with that forever? And what do I do with it?
No, you're certainly not stuck with it. SWP will always make a market. And behind us, basically, we offset that metal to large U.S. wholesalers. So within the vault, we've actually created a liquid two-way market. So you can buy from us, you can sell to us on demand. We never refuse a trade. There's always a buyer in this market. So you're not stuck with it, even though I would recommend you hold on to it for as long as possible and accumulate over time as your portfolio grows, of course. But you've always got an option to sell as well, of course.
And then I guess that's the same with any kind of precious metal that there, whether it's platinum or silver or
that's right,
gold. Logistically, what's the benefit of being here in Cayman per se?
Well, it's really convenient, obviously, for any of us who live here to be able to buy and store locally. It's not all Caribbean islands, especially this size, would have a facility like this. But primarily our clients are Americans, Canadians, and Europeans who are looking to move some hard assets offshore. Similar concept to buying a piece of property in another jurisdiction where you feel it's stable, it's safe, it's got long-term potential. these are people that are a little bit uncomfortable with their home jurisdictions for a variety of different reasons, or they simply have accumulated so much wealth in one particular jurisdiction that it's now time to geodiversify that wealth a little bit. And it's just, again, the concept of diversification and safety risk mitigation.
Interesting, yeah.
Just wanted to throw this out there. In terms of diversification, I mean, we're very U.S. dollar centric, but another aspect to think about is just home currency, because if we think about UK citizens, right, who've had a tremendous devaluation of the pound, well, the portion of their wealth stored in gold was protected from that, right? So it was, again, functioned as insurance for the wealth. So just wanted to point out another example there.
Yeah, I think, just we've got kind of one more minute here, but I agree. I mean, I think it's the precious metals, to your point, Mark, are very much kind of mysterious, or we refer to them as jewelry, or we conceptualize with it, but we don't really know how to kind of access it. So we're absolutely thrilled to kind of have you on the show and give our listeners a little bit of oversight. If you have a chance, I would strongly recommend you get in contact with Mark and have a tour of Strategic Wealth Preservation. Their kind of vault and their system there, it's extremely professional. I think the Cayman Islands are really lucky to have a group who's kind of dedicated to this. And I know it's just in its infancy, but it seems like it's getting a lot of traction. And so we're absolutely thrilled you could join us on the show.
Well, thanks, guys. You know that it's a pleasure being here with you and getting to know you guys. And really what I appreciate is that you see the significance of precious metals, and some people miss that point, but you guys obviously get it. Thanks for having me. And if anyone wants to learn more about SWP, it's swpcayman.com is the website. It's quite a robust website. They can learn a lot about gold and silver and about our operation there.
Great. With that, we thank the listeners for joining us here on Money Sense. You can follow us on Twitter at Money Sense is the handle, or you can send us an email if you have any questions, or if you want to hear us talk about anything kind of investing related or with financial services in the Cayman Islands. It's moneysense at Candy Wacky. Until 2 weeks from now, we thank you for listening, and have a great day, everyone.
Money Sense is brought to you with the support of OneTradeX. OneTradeX, the Cayman Islands' #1 choice for online brokerage.